I rise to make a brief contribution to an important bill that is being debated in the National Assembly. And it certainly would have been remiss of me were I not to make even a brief intervention on this momentous occasion. Say what you will about our Team Unity administration, none would be able to fault us for having so successfully implemented our program and for fulfilling our commitment. This one today is for those who had an interest in seeing real change in the political paradigm. This bill today is for those who genuinely wanted transparency and openness in government. This bill is part of our willingness and commitment to do the things we say we will do. Indeed, way back then, we said that we will bring Freedom of Information Act to the Parliament. Our section on governance said then at page 43, reflecting on the situation that was, the reality of what is passing as governance today is St. Kitts and Nevis is a far and dismal cry from what the framers of the Constitution intended. The current regime of the Denzel Douglas era completely ignores the Constitution and the law with regard to informing the public. And the manifesto goes on to identify the litany of breaches by the Denzel Douglas administration. It says, abhorring this travesty of conscience and trust, and to usher in a new paradigm of government of the people, for the people, and by the people, a Team Unity government will. And at A, it said what we will do. A, pass a Freedom of Information Act, allowing all citizens and residents of our nation to have the right and ability to access information with regard to the affairs of their government. So we promise for the 2015 election campaign, today, 3 years later, we are making good on that promise. Yes. I want to commend this government for superb performance. Yes, sir. We say what we will do, and we are doing what we say we will do. And that is confounding the opposition, because the opposition has relegated itself to a space of irrelevance in the political future of this country. How dare the opposition, who spent 20 years in government, come into the Honorable House to chastise a young government just over 3 years for performing and outperforming it, for doing what it could not do or chose not to do in 20 long years. 20 long years. The Douglas administration will not do anything to advance freedom of information and all it entails to improve the access to information about government in the country. And it comes today, pretending hypocrisy, pretending that this government was doing something wrong because we took so long. He had 20 years and he did not do it. We, in 3 years, are succeeding where he has failed. That is part of the irrelevance of the opposition. And so long as the member for number 6 leads the opposition this way, the opposition will continue to hold a safe space of irrelevance for the future of the country. Because we are moving the country forward and upward to a better place than we inherited it. The opposition wants us to go backwards in terms of the development of the country. I spoke to our manifesto, and the member for number 8 is right. The country knows it must be forward ever, with a team unity administration, backward never, with the Douglas Labour Party. I look back at 2004 because I wondered whether we should name the hypocrites who are sitting on the opposition benches. Should we name them? Should we not name the member for number 6? When we look at the document on which he posed way back then in 2004, at page 46, in our new term, we will complete the process of integrity in public life legislation and other relevant regulations. He left government. He left government. He left government. The member for number 6 left government. Left the government without implementing, without putting into practice integrity in public life legislation. He left. Had he done that, we would have been further ahead in terms of political climate and environment in the country. But it suited his purpose, because had he passed integrity in public life legislation, we would have known that the member for number 6 had leased his property at 5 Ways to the Taiwanese at $10,000 US per month. We would have known that over the period the member for number 6 had going into his own resources over $3 million. $3 million he collected from having been the sole person offering to the Taiwanese embassy his property for their residence. No public tender, no public bidding,
no freedom of information,
not even a selective bidding process. He didn't invite realtors like Telka Francis. He didn't invite any other person to provide competition. He set himself up as the only and singular beneficiary of the lease. So he wasn't interested in the integrity of public life then. He seems to be interested in it now. But I go to page 47, and I'm looking again at the manifesto, 2004. 2004. You see, they couldn't tick those things of having been completed. We can tick it now because we have done it. That is why they don't like us to be marking up our books, to underline our achievement, to celebrate them. Because when it comes to performance, they can't compare with our Team Unity administration. But here at page 47, we will introduce a Freedom of Information Act. Understand that? In 2004, at page 47 of the Labour Party manifesto, the member for number 6, then Prime Minister, committed that he would introduce freedom of information. What has been the record? No freedom of information. Up until this day, he exited the parliament. Well, not exited. He exited the office of the Prime Minister. And no freedom of information. So was that window dressing? Was that window dressing? Was that just to satisfy the appetite of a people at election time in 2004? How can he explain now? How can he exercise moral authority in a debate about freedom of information from the high office of the leader of the opposition when he had 20 years to do, and he never did? And he promised in 2004 to do it. And in 2015, the country bade him goodbye, and he had not completed that single act. So how could he come in now to reprimand and to scold us for doing the very thing that he failed to do? Set out in clear print. Set out in clear print in his manifesto. No moral authority. Undeserving to be considered for leadership of this country. And never again will the country go back to the leadership of Denzel Douglas. Never again will it happen. He cannot be the voice nor the face of integrity in the country. If he were to have had that, he should have taken action with respect to the media reports in Jamaica and in Barbados that showed him big and broad to the world as the face of corruption in the world. He exited office with a regional paper of credible repute describing the member for number 6 as the face of corruption in the region. And that is the man who comes now to lead the debate. The opposition is a tired, lazy bunch. That is my view of them. Each and every member of the opposition is a tired and lazy parliamentarian. And to hide and to compensate for their intellectual laziness and physical laziness, they come to scapegoat. We want a consultation. Well, in 2004, where was the consultation? The consultation was the debate that was taking place in the alleys, in the streets, from the political platform about the direction in which the country ought to go. That was a consultation. Our manifesto reflects the results of our consultation with the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. That is why we are taking them so seriously. That is why we are proud to take one more promise fulfilled. That is what it is. He reminds us that today is the International Day for the media. Freedom of media, which we encourage. What better way to express our support for media freedom than to come in the hallowed chambers of the National Assembly to enhance their access to public information. This is a good deed. This is a good deed because we have nothing to hide. We have come in and we came to this parliament, and we have come to this parliament to make official information more freely available and to provide for the proper access by each person to official information. That is what we are doing. The legal principle behind the law requires that information shall be made available unless there is a good reason for withholding it. And that is why the exceptions are there in the law. No right is absolute. You have the right to speak, but there are laws of defamation. Because when you speak out of turn, the person injured will contest your right to speak. That is what happened. It is not absolute. You can't defame persons and people have no recourse because you hide behind the Constitution that I have a right to speak. You have a right to speak the right things.
That's correct.
That is what the law, in its actual implementation, embodies. So, to speak the truth. Nothing then is wrong about the exemptions that we have provided within the law. And I was a little bit surprised that the member for Nevis and the opposition bench, while at one time he says that he has no quarrel with the exemptions, he went on to make a fuss. But there's nothing unique in that regard about our legislation in the context of Barbados. They said that conclusive reasons for withholding information include national security. In the Barbados bill, they have provided an exception to the right to access information if it concerns matters of national security. We have the same provision. And that is why I say the members of the opposition are intellectually lazy. They come to this parliament seemingly unprepared for substantive debate and the bills before them. You gave them 3 years to do their research. And they come into the parliament confused and concerned, not having consulted with themselves or persons better informed than they are. They come to say that we should have had a consultation with them.
They didn't talk to the constituents.
And they don't talk to their constituents. They're up on the high hill looking down on the people of Basseterre. What else are there? In the Barbados legislation, they said that they will exempt information when it involves international relations. In other words, once it's state-to-state matter, once it's a matter between Barbados and the U.S. government, that matter can be made available willy-nilly, as you will, by members of the public. They say that they will also hide information that was supplied by another government in confidence. They will not provide information that impacts upon the personal safety of other people. And they will never provide information that could create severe economic damage. That is what Barbados is saying. But these are identical almost to what we are saying in this legislation, and yet they try to make a mountain over nothing. That something is wrong because you're constraining the bill. That is why I say it is intellectual laziness why they are making these kinds of arguments. And what surprised me is that there is no real leader of the opposition, because they all go like three blind mice. See how they run, repeating the same frolic of logic in their presentation. None of them smart enough to say, I will not go down that path, because it makes no sense. You must have bounds. Mr. Speaker, they come to the Parliament making a mockery of parliamentary representation. I want to look, could you help me, Senator, to the Trinidad bill, to see again the intellectual laziness. Bahamas, whichever bill you had there. The Information Commissioner.
Commissioner?
Section 30.
There's some exceptions. We're looking at the exceptions.
The Office of Information Commissioner.
From Barbados. Among Bahamas.
A point I want to make by this illustration is that the very things of which they have complained have found themselves into the laws of other lands. So there can't be something so violently bad about them and objectionable when almost every country that has done this legislation before us did what we are doing. Intellectual laziness, if not dishonesty, on the part of the opposition. So hear what Bahamas says. There shall be a person who shall be known as the Information Commissioner, who shall be appointed by the Governor General upon the recommendation of the Prime Minister. Understand that? In Bahamas, the same way we are doing it here in law, is the same way they did it. The Governor General must take the recommendation of the Prime Minister. I don't hear no screaming and wailing. Well, whose recommendation will he take? Will he take the recommendation of the leader of the opposition who has been rejected from government in preference to that of the leader of the government? It doesn't make sense in a parliamentary democracy. You can't be in opposition and run the government still. You can't be in opposition and determine how the government will function.
March 2017, last year, March 2017.
And then it goes on to say, just as we have said, that the Governor General will consult with the leader of the opposition. Same provision. But it appears, having lost the government, he still wants to be leader of the government. So he has a problem with the Prime Minister. Substitute the Prime Minister for leader of the opposition, and you would see if that makes sense, except to an intellectually lazy and dishonest opposition. That is what I am talking about. They're not doing their homework. They think parliamentary life is easy life. They come to the parliament to prevent their third absence. They come to the parliament, as it were, to mark their name. And in the course of the presentation, they pick up on a little thing and they try to spin it as if to create the appearance of a song which has no substance, which has no rhyme, and which they can't finish. No lyrics. And so we go from 30 to 22, because we had the discussion from them about another matter. They were concerned about an exemption provision as it relates to information between ministers and between ministries. They don't understand. But didn't they read other legislation as we have read them, and to which I am referring? Haven't they done that? They would have seen identical provisions, so they should have told themselves there was no need to get up to make a mischief, because what we are doing here is to the salutary benefit of the country. And with all their toying and throwing and effort to create mischief, they had to concede, at least the member for Nevis in opposition said, that it was good to have this legislation. But the but must be that when they had an opportunity to bring it to the parliament, they did not do it. And the member for Nevis on the opposition bench was
The Minister of Justice.
the Attorney General,
Minister of Justice.
Minister of Justice for a short while, albeit a very short while.
Same minister.
And he did nothing. There goes his right to speak on it. There goes the moral authority, which is its strongest point for leadership. And he has none, and they have none. And the member for number 6 has none. He said, prejudice to effective conduct of public affairs. That is the rational advance for securing as privilege the communication between ministers. But those who are too intellectually lazy to do the people's representative work come to find a problem. A recording exempt from disclosure. If A, its disclosure will, or is its disclosure will be likely to prejudice the maintenance of the Convention of Collective Responsibility of Ministers. You hear that? Cabinet documents all over the world are secret documents, the integrity of which has to be preserved. And the member for number 6, who was the master leaker, complained about that during his tenure. Dying tenure market. Mark you. And yet he says he don't understand why this provision is there. It is to preserve the Convention of the Collective Responsibility. B, its disclosure would be likely to inhibit the free and frank exchange of views for the purposes of deliberation. Eugene Hamilton, member for number 8, must be able to freely engage his ministerial colleague without fear that his frank views and exchanges would be cast in an unfavorable light into the public domain. Another reason, it is legal advice given by or on behalf of the Attorney General. You protect those. What is so hard for members opposite to understand and to appreciate? When the Attorney General writes on a particular subject providing guidance to the minister, it is not good public policy that exchange be out there in the public domain. And D, its disclosure would otherwise prejudice or would be likely to otherwise prejudice the effective conduct of public affairs. That is what it is. That is what the law says. And it is all written here. Section 21 of the Bahamas Act records revealing government's deliberative processes subject to subsection 3. A record is exempt from disclosure if it contains opinions, advice, or recommendations prepared for the cabinet or a committee thereof. A record of consultations or deliberations arising in the course of the proceedings of the cabinet. Consultations or deliberations between the Prime Minister and the Governor General shall be exempt from disclosure. When I go in accordance with constitutional practice of the Westminster model to sit and to confer with the Governor General, I come back and I report to my cabinet colleagues the substance of that conversation. This is saying, following the Bahamas precedent, that kind of consultation and deliberations has to be kept secure because it undermines the fundamentals of the system. So clearly, had members of the opposition done their research, we would not be having this debate. They engage in a frolic all day today, when they ought to have commended the government for going forward with a matter about which they clearly was timid in its execution. So I am happy that we are able to advance the agenda of good governance, Mr. Speaker, in the country. And I want then to thank the Attorney General for bringing this bill, as he has done today, long before the 5-year interval, and long before elections are constitutionally due, somewhere by August 2020. And if they are getting too anxious, we will keep them waiting longer, for we are in good standing with the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. They came, and the member for number 3 talked about the number of amendments that are to come. Well, always he is new, inexperienced, not versed in the parliamentary processes, function of time, and perhaps more. Well, the way the system works, you bring the bill for first reading, you go through the second reading, and in the third reading, before the third reading, you go to the committee stages. And there is where you deal with the amendments, be they one or several. Be they one or several, it is immaterial to the process. And I have been in this parliament for nigh 25 years. So I understand. There have been days when we have gone through reams and reams of paper, beyond 6, to tidy up bills. Some of them on minor points, some of them on substantive points. But unless you are too lazy to deal with them as they come, one by one they come, make your contribution there as we're going through the committee. Never again must members opposite talk about an absence of time. Their last day as the government of St. Kitts and Nevis was on the 16th of January 2015. What happened on that day was the most significant undermining of parliamentary democracy ever witnessed, except perhaps somewhere in Mugabe, Zimbabwe, long ago. Never happened. The member for number 1 was so right. For the first time in history, the Prime Minister in a democracy moved a resolution that the debate be ended and denied every other willing individual an opportunity to speak. Most senior member of the parliament, senior minister, member for Nevis, 10, denied the right to speak. And so fundamental a matter as boundaries changes, the member for number 8 named and shamed and kicked out almost of the parliament when the most fundamental changes were to come to the constituencies which he represented. The members opposite have no shame, not an iota of self-respect to come in this parliament with that history of outrageous parliamentary behavior to offer censure or condemnation to our government for doing the right thing. Members got 2 minutes notice of the sitting of the Parliament and the Boundaries Commission. Lest we forget, and for the first time in the history of the Douglas administration, Parliament start on time. First time. You know, the member for number 6 is perennially late. And he says he shows up when he wants. 4:15? Attorney General remembers. A Friday afternoon at that. When town was up for frolic, they came into Parliament, shocked the country in disbelief that they were so confident that they had to hide. And within minutes of the Boundaries Commission, headed by Peter Jenkins, having completed its work, the document, I am sure it's close to 1,000 pages, not 6 pages, member for number 3, a parliamentary boundaries document, voluminous, heavy. We never get it, and we are debating it. Affecting our constituencies, and we were denied it. And the document went up to His Excellency, came back to the Prime Minister, went to the Attorney General chambers, all within quiet 5 minutes to reach to the Parliament. They have no shame to come to this Parliament today talking about time, when their last act as a government was the denial of time. They say we are making a mockery when we are doing the right thing. I don't want to remind him of his attitude to the press, because if I were a learned QC, I will call Junie Liebert of Freedom Radio as my principal witness. Of course. Junie Liebert went, and I still have his text saved, went to a press conference of the rejected Prime Minister, and he was called basically a fool. Yes. And Junie texted me, and he said to me, he will never again go to a press conference called by Denzil Douglas. That's what he told me. Because he was shamed. The entire country was shocked. That was his attitude to the press. Several of them, after a while, didn't bother to go to his press conference. It was an exercise in futility. I would have called, if I were a learned QC, Valentine Thomas to the stand and asked Valentine of free volition to explain how it is that the member for number 6 contrived to take away his radio station from him, because Valentine Thomas said that to me, and he has said that in public forum. That was their treatment of the press. So when he comes with his sour grapes, disheartened as he is, that we are doing the right work on behalf of the people, we know that this is confounding them. We know that what we are doing irks the opposition, because so long as we are doing the right things on behalf of the people, then their positions as members of the opposition, even those positions, are going to be elusive for them at the next election. That is why they say we are doing these things, because it's elections. They seem to be afraid to face the people, because it will be a mockery if some of the members and the opposition benches were to go back to the people of the country and offer themselves to represent them. They want to talk a lot of things. I want to point to the World Justice Project, Rule of Law, for 2017 and 2018, an international and respected publication which says that under the theme Unity Administration, corruption is at the lowest ebb of any Caribbean member state. This country is performing excellently when a judge by the Rule of Law Index of the World Justice Report, outdoing all countries in the Caribbean. It says here that this report is the world's most comprehensive data set of its kind, and the only to rely principally on primary data, not hearsay, measuring countries' adherence to the rule of law from the perspective of ordinary people and their experiences. And it goes on to say that they look at corruption not only of the political process, they look at press freedom, they look at corruption of the judiciary, because corruption can take place in any setting where there are human beings, not just in the political space. In the judiciary, they have looked to find the evidence. They brought in an expert panel of people, not like those election losers who go on Freedom Radio to tout corruption every day, when they are the faces of corruption in St. Kitts and Nevis. And the panel ranked St. Kitts commendably among all countries in the world. In fact, St. Kitts was one of the few countries whose global rank improved year on year. We did better than St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Suriname, and so on and so on. This is what we have done to the country. Restore it to a place where it is now getting international attention as a model. Not hearsay from the opposition. World Justice Project, Rule of Law around the world. And we are one of the best adherents to the rule of law in the world. I am proud of this. And it is because our legislative framework is good. Today we are making it even better through our own example of leadership. Integrity in public life will come. Well, it will come this month. We will make it happen this month. We promise it, and we will activate it, because our word is our bond. And I have always said, the government affairs is not going to be run by talk show hosts. The government affairs will be run by the cabinet of people elected. No one out there have no monopoly and wisdom, and no one out there will direct the cancer address, but they will never direct us. That's how we will conduct the affairs of the country, because we are doing it in the interest of all the people and not in the interest of a selected few. People gave us that mandate, and it is at our option that the legislation must come. We will hear and understand the dynamics of the people, and as persons who face the electorate, we understand them. We know them. Remember, for number one, I'd like to say to the people, you know me, and I know you. We know what we are dealing with. We went to the country with two platforms, a prosperity agenda and a good governance agenda. Both must happen. We were always clear of that.
That's right.
We determined that the prosperity agenda will be given priority by this government, that we will bring an end to thousands of people on a PEP program because the economy was not working well. Therefore, they could not find real jobs.
Right.
We have half the labor force, so to speak,
Yes.
on the STEP program. Persons, because the economy has been growing, have found real jobs in the economy. They could now go to the US government for a visit because they have a real job, not a temporary pep work. We have half that. And they could get their bank information. And they can go to get a loan. We did that. And while we have grown the economy and allowed for the movement of people from a temporary assignment on the PEP to something more permanent, the employment numbers still rising.
That's right.
What a wonderful thing. What a wonderful thing. It tells us that the persons who have been, as it were, reoriented from PEP have found work elsewhere.
That's right.
That is why, notwithstanding, we have reduced the numbers there. The employment figures from the Social Security indicate quite clearly that the employment is at its highest ebb ever in the history of St. Kitts and Nevis. More contributors than at any other period in time. The Inland Revenue records that they have more business licenses than ever in its history under Team Unity. The growth for the economy has been positive year after year, compared with their last term, negative 3.8, negative 1.9, negative 0.9. Every year we have come, it was positive, building on it. And members opposite seem not to understand what positive growth is. And that when they have taken the country for 4 years from 2009 downwards into negative growth, accumulatively of over 10%, to talk about that they had a last year of 6% still means they left the country down in the hole, 4 feet down, because it went down by 10. So you're coming out of the hole, but you're not yet clear.
Yes.
So they left the country in real terms worse than they met it. Members opposite, because they're intellectually lazy or dishonest, they do not understand that they can't boast about an episodic growth of 6% when for 4 years before that they took the country downwards, worse than it was 10 years. You've gone down in the hole. You're still in the hole. 6 feet deep to walk, 2 feet up, you still have 4 more to go.
That's right.
And that concept eludes them. Let me end by thanking all the colleagues on this side for the wholesome support for this positive delivery by our administration. Let me thank the member for number 1 for his strong support for this bill, and the senator in the Ministry of Health for her support, and our Deputy Speaker for an excellent presentation on the bill. Her words ricochets well with the public. Her manner of delivery and her presentation shows contrast. He who was and she who must be for the future. That is what we saw displayed today. He who was and she who must be for the future of the people of West Barstow. So I commend her for being well prepared, well suited in temperament to do the job of excellent representation that the people of number 3 so much deserve. And for this period in time, they are getting a disservice. I commend the bill safe passage, and I commend our Attorney General for bringing this bill to the House and to allow us, but more than us, the people, the sense of satisfaction that this government remains on the right track. We are doing the right things for the right reason, and we are doing them at the right time. May it please you, Mr. Speaker.
Stay up to date with news, programs, and activities of the government with SKNIS. Like us on Facebook. Listen to us on SoundCloud. Follow us on Twitter. And watch our videos on YouTube. Connect with us today. SKNIS, St. Kitts and Nevis Information Service.